Hello, in this video we'll focus on a very important grammar point for C1 level, which is called emphatic inversion. Now, before we start, let me tell you that the images shown here are not copyrighted and proper credit is attributed to the authors. In the same way, the ideas expressed here are intended only to show language use and have no political purposes at all. Now, let's see what emphatic inversion is all about. Imagine that you have a student that arrives late and he also interrupts your lesson. So there are two things here, and instead of saying you arrived late and you interrupted the lesson, you want to be more emphatic and you will say, not only did you arrive late, young man, but you also interrupted the lesson. So we see here that the focus is, and there are two things, so we're going to move the negative at the beginning, and because we move the negative at the beginning, the order in the first sentence is going to be inverted as if it were a question. The reason why we use emphatic inversion is not just because we want to focus on the negative, but because we want to sound more formal and we want to have a more powerful impact on our interlocutors. For example, compare "I had never had such a great teacher before" to "never before had I had such a great teacher." So if you say the first thing, it is okay, it's normal, but if you say it in the second way, you're going to sound much more formal and the effect is going to be much more powerful. Inversion can be used with certain negative or restrictive clauses such as "at no time," "never before," "never again," "no longer," "not in 1,000 years," "not one." They also include "not a penny," "not a bit," "not a single person," "too often," "too long," "no sooner than," "hardly then," and "barely when." Finally, they can also be used in clauses such as "only in," "only when," "rarely," "seldom," "little," "no way," "under no circumstances," "on no account," and "not only but," as the first example that I showed you. I'll illustrate the use of emphatic inversion by showing you an example with people in the Democratic Party. Imagine that there's going to be a debate and all of the candidates are going to talk about different topics such as racism, immigration policies, gun control policies, the soaring cost of higher education, the healthcare system, climate change, the carceral system, legalization of cannabis, and the opioid crisis in the United States. So we have the first candidate here, Bernie Sanders, Senator Bernie Sanders, and he has an idea. He wants to talk about how the banks are robbing the students by giving them student loans with high rates of interest. So he wants to say this. He wants to say students will not have to pay a single penny to the banks. So the idea is good, but we can improve it. So Bernie can have a more powerful impact on his voters if he says it this way: not a single penny will students have to pay to the banks. We can see that it's the same thing, but the second sentence is much more powerful because we begin with "not a single penny." Here we have a second candidate, Kamala Harris, and she wants to say something about women because she's a feminist. So women should never be aggressed or discriminated against. Instead of saying that, she can say, under no circumstances should women be aggressed or discriminated against, or no way should women be aggressed or discriminated against, or not once should women be aggressed or discriminated against. We can see again that the effect of negative inversion, negative emphasis, is much more powerful in the second sentence. Now let's see what Beto O'Rourke may say. Now he's interested in inclusion, so he has this idea: the government must include everybody in the important decisions of this country. Now that idea is really good, but he can improve it by saying instead, not a single person must the government exclude from the important decisions of this country. By placing the negative clause at the beginning, he's going to have a much powerful impact on his voters. Now, Julian Castro, being the son of immigrants, he believes that a wall is not a solution to the immigration problem in the United States. So he has this idea. There is no way a wall shall be built between the United States and Mexico. Now, the idea is beautiful, but instead of saying that, if he wants to be more convincing and more persuasive and more powerful, he may say instead, no way shall a wall be built between the United States and Mexico. Now, this is another candidate, Bill de Blasio, and being a New Yorker, he's worried about climate change. So he says climate change is real and it is progressing much faster than we thought it would. The idea is very good and he's worried about climate, but he can be more persuasive and convincing if he begins with not only. So, not only is climate change real, but it is also progressing faster than we thought it would. So we can see here again how by moving the negative restrictive clause at the beginning, the language becomes much more powerful. Now imagine that Senator Elizabeth Warren wanted to say something about opioids. She has this idea. Americans never imagined that opioids could be so dangerous. I shall ban them. Now the idea is good because opioids have been killing lots of Americans, but instead of saying that, she can say, little did Americans imagine that opioids could be so dangerous. Or, not once did Americans imagine that opioids could be so dangerous. I shall ban them. Now, if you see again, by moving the restrictive or negative clause at the beginning, Elizabeth Warren's speech becomes much more convincing and persuasive. And finally, we're going to see this candidate that was eventually the winner of the election, Joe Biden. And obviously his main asset was that he was friends with Obama. So imagine that he could have said that in his speech. I never failed as a vice president. Failing was not an option in the Obama administration. So this is a good point, but I think instead of saying that, he can improve his speech by saying, not once did I fail as vice president. Failing was not an option in the Obama administration. So again, we can see here the power of emphatic inversion because your language becomes more formal but also more powerful. This was emphatic inversion and it is a very important grammar point for C1. Keep practicing and I hope that you will improve your level and attain your certification.